third look.
All out blitz. Fromm lets it fly. Back shoulder. Cajo. Touchdown.
I think he got his right foot down, Troy.
Utes show pressure and bring it. It is a jailbreak. Fink able to slip the first man. Wafting to the end zone. Underthrown. Adjustment and a catch. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Touchdown USC. Magic happening for Matt Fink.
Here's JT looking first. JT first down. Jonathan Taylor rolling. Touchdown. Wisconsin 72 yards.
This past weekend, there were many games that will play key roles in the upcoming playoff in January. However, where we will start is going to be with one of the most shocking developments of the entire season. I'm Chaz Messman alongside Nick Nath and Jack Johnson. And that shocking development is that Houston star quarterback, D'Eriq King, will be taking a redshirt year. He's a senior. Over the past 2 years, he's second in the entire country in terms of touchdowns with 62 over the past 2 seasons. And he just decided to redshirt out of the blue.
Yeah, I don't really get it. I don't know what the point of this is. I don't know if he's mentally just not there to like enter the league right now, or if he just loves Houston that much that he just wants to stay there and then play a year after that.
From his comments, it seemed almost like he wanted to stay at Houston.
Yeah.
But I get that they suck, but this is just a move that we have never seen before.
It's interesting because at first I thought it was because he had problems with Dana Holgorsen. That they just didn't gel. I mean, Dana's coming over from West Virginia, and D'Eriq's been at Houston for a while. Maybe the offensive system didn't line up, but certainly like recent developments, like you said, Chaz, kind of changed my outlook on this.
I mean, I've heard a couple rumors saying maybe Oklahoma, based on Lincoln Riley's comments post-game. I think it was their first game of the season against Oklahoma, where he, praised about him. But that's just what coaches do all the time. This is something that we've never seen before, and I'm starting to wonder if this is going to be the new trend. We saw Kelly Bryant last year deciding to transfer. However, in this case, it wasn't like there was some new guy coming in and taking his role that's better. He just was like, oh, we suck. I want another year so I can be ready for the NFL, and decided, yeah, I'm going to sit out. And his, what is it, the second leading receiver did the exact same thing?
So do you think we'll see this trend with when quarterbacks will just decide to redshirt and just want to go to Oklahoma because it's Lincoln Riley and he turns quarterbacks into Heismans?
There's no doubt that Lincoln Riley is arguably the best offensive mind in college football, maybe in the entire, country of NFL, high school, whatever. The guy he's an absolute wizard up there. But they got a lot of talented guys behind Jalen Hurts in that locker room, namely Spencer Rattler, the Elite 11 MVP, and the number one quarterback in the country a year ago. So I'm not sure if D'Eriq King fits in there. I heard a couple rumors of maybe Florida State, because Kendall Briles, his offensive coordinator a few years ago, is now the offensive coordinator there. But this is just puzzling to me. It feels like he quit on his team 4 games into the year.
It's interesting because he saw action in his true freshman season, and so with the new NCAA rules, you can keep your red shirt all the way through. It just has to be 4 games into the season. So I think what he said is, we're 1-3. I've seen that we're not going to go anywhere this season. We're just going to be scratching and clawing to make it to a low-end bowl game. Let me try and find somewhere that will not only raise my exposure level like a Florida State, which I actually think could be a good option, or let me find an offensive system that fits me better so I have a better chance of getting drafted, getting to the league.
But is he ruining his NFL profile by doing this then?
I wouldn't say so, because, would you say that Kelly Bryant would have been ruining his by transferring? They could say something about character-wise, but at the end of the day, talent speaks for itself. It's not like the red flag for him is, some assault case.
Oh, yeah.
Or something, stealing like a laptop, like Cam Newton. I'm not saying he's Cam Newton, but you know what I mean. It's just, maybe quitting on his team. So it was puzzling to me, and I think this is one of the downfalls of the new redshirt rule. Obviously, it was put in place so that, young freshmen, can get a couple, meaningful game time snaps and really help their development, but still also keep that redshirt year so they don't have to waste an entire year of eligibility if they play in one game and get like 6 snaps in garbage time.
Which I think is a really smart rule. Personally, I really like that rule because you would have guys come in as highly touted prospects, especially in quarterback rooms that are really crowded. They wouldn't get any snaps their freshman year because they're the second or third string guy, whereas they're coming out of Pop Warner, they're coming out of high school. They've been the guy their whole life. So you have to always massage those egos because these guys know they're good. That's why they're playing D1 NCAA football. And so I like that rule because it allows them to get snaps in a meaningful game, not just run with the scout team and see, does my game really match up with this offensive system?
Yeah, we saw that a lot in the bowl games. You know, players bringing in, or coaches bringing in freshmen to get a couple of meaningful snaps. ASU did it with a couple wide receivers. USC was not in a bowl game, but near the end of the season, they brought in a couple guys, Devin Martin being one of them, who actually just transferred to Oregon State, if I'm not mistaken. But, yeah, it's a good rule, and we saw Justin Fields kind of get in that platoon role. We're seeing it a little bit with Joey Gatewood this year at Auburn.
Kind of like Joe Burrow also a little bit.
Oh, yeah, no, because it wouldn't have worked for Joe Burrow because it was put in place last year, and Joe Burrow was the man last year. But we're going to get into our players of the week from the past week. Jack, who is yours?
Had to be Joe Burrow.
He's been incredible.
He's been absolutely unbelievable. This is the best LSU offense.
It's absolutely unreal. They've been the most impressive team that I've seen this entire season.
And I am really high on LSU. It always boils down for LSU, kind of like with Michigan and Ohio State, to their matchup. So I don't know at the present time, as good as Joe Burrow has been and as good as the LSU offense has been, if they can beat Alabama. But one thing that I do like about Burrow is that they've been able to start taking shots down the field for what feels like the first time
in
since
a long
I've
time.
been watching LSU personally, is that they're ready to go out there, run and gun, throw it down the field, take shots, don't be conservative, spread the receivers out. And last week, I would say, Chaz, the stat line speaks for itself. I mean,
6 touchdowns, an LSU record.
6 touchdowns, school record, 25 of 34, 398 yards. This is coming off his unbelievable performance in prime time against Texas, which I think, if you hadn't been paying attention to SEC football last year, Joe Burrow really introduced himself to America that night against Texas.
He is probably the most improved player in the country. I've been saying it all season. He's been absolutely phenomenal. He's got the wide receivers to do it, namely Justin Jefferson, whose brother, former LSU quarterback Jordan Jefferson, another one of those runners. But Joe Burrow, I think, is what gives LSU the ability to beat Alabama this season. I don't know if that will happen because Alabama is Alabama. Nick Saban's the greatest college football coach of all time.
Still a home game for Alabama, too.
Exactly. However, it gives him a fighting chance where in years past, even a couple years ago, where his strong defensive games, and what they needed to do is if it was 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, on 3rd and long, they just could not get that first down. And it really haltered them because Alabama may have had the quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa and Jacob Coker. So, yeah, Joe Burrow's just been phenomenal this year. Nick, how about you?
So mine will be in a losing effort. Washington State's quarterback Anthony Gordon, who put up record-setting numbers against UCLA. Granted, to Washington State should not have lost this game by any means. UCLA found a way to get back in the game. I'll give him credit to that. But you have to admire Anthony Gordon's performance in a losing effort. 41 of 61, 570 yards, 9 touchdowns. I'm going to say it again. 9 touchdowns. Which accounted for all their points. They ended with 63 points. Did throw 2 interceptions, but I'm going to say it again. 9 touchdowns.
Yeah, I didn't watch this game because I was at the ASU one where they disappointingly lost to Colorado.
Yeah.
However, that was an absolute shootout. That was the first time I think we've seen Chip Kelly's offense actually work at UCLA. Yeah. He's repeatedly said that he's not running his Oregon offense. And, last Saturday we actually saw them run similar things that they were running back when he was at Oregon with Darren Thomas and LaMichael James.
Another thing I want to bring up is that, like you said, it was a losing effort, Nick, but He didn't. Aaron Gordon did his job.
Oh, he did, for
He
sure.
did his job. Anytime you throw for 9 touchdowns,
He did more than
You
he
should
was
win.
expected to.
you should absolutely win.
For
That's
sure.
on the Washington State defense.
You can say, oh, 2 interceptions. No, he threw 9 touchdowns. He threw 7 more touchdowns than interceptions.
It feels like that's what we always hear about a Mike Leach team, even going back to when it was Texas Tech, is that, yeah, they put up all these points. They light up the scoreboard and light up the stat sheets with all those air raid offense. However, the defense is always what's lacking.
They
Basically,
can't get off the field.
Exactly. It's like watching Oklahoma, but not as talented, if that makes sense.
I get that.
Well, it's funny because Mike Leach's offenses have been so successful because he's an air raid genius.
Mm-hmm.
But you would think that Mike Leach
Could
through
hire
all
a
these
defensive
years,
coordinator.
could hire a competent defensive coordinator that wouldn't blow a 42-17 lead.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is an astronomical lead that Washington State let go, and that involves absolutely no slowing down from the Wazoo quarterback, Gordon, who, again, like we mentioned, threw for 9 touchdowns.
You don't just do
Say
that.
it again. Yeah, 9
Yeah.
touchdowns.
So, I mean, you don't just do that. That's video game-like numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's putting
it's
yourself
stupid.
on freshman mode.
That's freshman mode 99 everything.
Yeah.
You know, back what we used to do when I was like 8 and just been like, oh, I'm going to win the Heisman in one game.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, my player of the week was the absolute train, Jonathan Taylor. 23 carries, 203 yards, 2 tutties, including an absolute, what was it? I think a 60-something yard run where he just broke a tackle and just was gone. That dude is so fast, so powerful. He's probably the best running back in all of college football. And Wisconsin just absolutely bulldozed Michigan this weekend.
It's tough, Chaz, because I'm a Michigan fan.
Oof.
Oh, I'm an Ohio State fan.
Oh, wow. This is really all of a sudden become an awkward room. It's tough because, when I break it down, I got to give Jonathan Taylor his credit.
Oh,
I
for
mean,
sure.
there's a lot of problems with the Michigan team. We can break it down later in the show, but Jonathan Taylor had himself not just an afternoon, he had himself a first quarter. Both of his touchdowns came in the first quarter, which is unbelievable how Michigan would come out after a bye week and then allow that. But we've seen it in years past where Michigan, they just seem to be overwhelmed in road games. I remember Saquon Barkley's ridiculous game against Michigan where he took the first snap from scrimmage, a direct snap, and housed it. And the same thing with Jonathan Taylor. He ran hog wild on Michigan this past Saturday. It was unbelievable to watch.
Jonathan Taylor might be one of the most underappreciated great college football players of all time. Not only is he probably leading the Heisman talk this year, this guy, freshman NCAA rushing record.
Yeah.
Sophomore year, did the exact same thing and broke the record again.
Broke his own record.
Exactly. We're talking about a guy that is putting up all-time numbers, but isn't quite getting the national, recognition that he should be getting because they just can't pass the ball.
Well, it's interesting, Chaz. The player comp that I have for Jonathan Taylor is Frank Gore. Because Taylor, he's got obviously a lot more breakaway speed than Gore, but one of the things that I really like about Taylor is that he just kind of flies under the radar. But when you look at the numbers and you look at who are the greatest running backs in college football history based off of production, numbers, and value, right? Jonathan Taylor makes every list.
Absolutely.
Yards per carry, total yards, touchdowns, total touches. This guy is extremely valuable, and what makes him so valuable is his durability. This is a guy that can touch the rock 35 times in a single game and be perfectly fine after it, and that's going to help him at the next level.
Exactly, and something that's underrated is how fast this guy is. He was a track guy in high school. Yeah, he's a big boy, and he's, super, super powerful between the tackles. However, if you let him in the open, in the open space in the secondary, he is gone pretty much every time.
I mean, people forget how good these Wisconsin running backs are. I mean, we had Monty Ball. I was growing up with Monty Ball was the star running back. We see Melvin Gordon doing well in the NFL now. He was a stud in Wisconsin. And now Jonathan Taylor's running away with the Heisman, literally running away with the Heisman. And it just shows you, these Wisconsin running backs, they're no joke. And Jonathan Taylor's finally putting them back on the map after.
And yeah, when we talk about Jonathan Taylor, we do have to give credit to that offensive line. Those beefy boys are big, and they are good.
For sure.
And I think Gus Johnson this weekend on the broadcast was talking about how pretty much every single one of them is from Wisconsin. So they're doing a really good job of recruiting in-state. Paul Chryst, he's continuing the Wisconsin tradition. However, defensively now, they're so much better under Jim Leonard. I mean, they are absolutely flying all over the field. Tacklings, their assignments are on point. I've been so impressed with this Wisconsin team. And they're starting to be able to throw the ball when they need to without Jack Cohn. I mean, obviously he's not going to light at the stat sheet or throw the ball downfield too much. However, in play action, he's been very efficient this year.
Well, they have to bite on the run, obviously, when I went to Wisconsin. I mean, the play action will be there all day for them. You already know going into the game, Jonathan Taylor's the most important man on the field. So when they fake that handoff, that defense is going to bite every time.
Cohn also had, a 30-yard touchdown run in the game against Michigan. And, you can say that's because they broke contain, but he ran right through a bunch of 4- and 5-star athletes to the end zone.
Exactly. Michigan looked bad. There's no denying that. However, we are going to get into the rankings. At 25, we start with the Big Ten team, Michigan State, bounce-back win after their loss to Arizona State. At 24, Texas A&M, 23, Kansas State, 22, UCF, and 21, Michigan. We'll start with Michigan State. Bounce back. They crushed Northwestern. Offense, looked good after being completely shut down by the Sun Devil defense.
Yes.
Lewerke looked like an actual competent quarterback again.
Yes.
Their defensive line's sick. They have the best run defense in the country, enough said.
You know what? I mean, their run defense hasn't gone anywhere, but it's funny because when MSU was at their peak about 6 or 7 years ago, 2013, when they had the Cousins and the Le'Veon Bell teams with Connor Cook, they were really not known for those future NFL players. They were known for their secondary. It allowed them to cover players in space and allowed them to beat Ohio State really pretty consistently for a while there. It allowed them to get those Rose Bowl victories. That's where Michigan State's fallen off. They've never lost that front-end talent in terms of the defensive line. Their linebackers, like Joe Bacci, have always kind of been there. Joe Bacci.
Exactly.
Joe Bacci, that type of player mold.
He's not going to be a great NFL player, but he's a workhorse.
Solid guy.
He's a Michigan State Spartan, a leader. He's a Michigan State linebacker.
He's a hard worker. He doesn't have, the intangibles and just the God-given ability to exceed at the next level, but he's a great college linebacker. Exactly what you need. But on that secondary, that's where they've struggled. And it's allowed teams to kind of put points up on them more than they would have liked in years past. They do a good job shutting down Arizona State the last couple years. Arizona State won in games that both hit the under. But yeah, Chaz, it always comes down to the offense. I mean, you can limit the running game to 50 yards per game, 60 yards per game, but when you get the ball back, if you can't score, you're not going to win more than 75% of your games.
Exactly. The offense exploded. We know their defense is great. The most points they've given up this season is 17 to Western Michigan. And in this game, it seemed like Lewerke, all those guys, Hayward, they were finally getting going, and we'll see if they're able to keep that momentum going. Texas A&M. They went down early, looked really, really bad against Auburn in the first half. Second half, a little bit of a comeback. This is probably, in my opinion, Kellen Mond's best game so far this season.
I would agree.
300 yards, couple touchdowns. But at the end of the day, they lost. And you can't lose big games.
I mean, they were at home also, but the fact that they were able to keep it under 10 points is a big reason why I think they're even still in the top 25. They put up a fight against Auburn. Auburn looked like they were going to run away with it, obviously. But I'll give credit to Texas A&M. They did show some resilience, and if they didn't play so good in the second half, they probably would be out of our top 25, in my opinion.
Oh, without a doubt. And like I said, the difference in the second half was Kellen Mond.
For sure.
Against Clemson, he was absolutely horrible.
Yep.
The guy was just missing wide open receivers. He wasn't reading the coverage correctly. And in this game, he started to get it going. Like I said, 2 touchdowns, 335 passing yards. We know they have athletes on defense. They have the talent. Jimbo Fisher is a very good head coach. However, they play in the SEC West.
Yeah.
And they have to play the likes of Alabama and LSU and Auburn. And I mean, maybe if they were still in the Big 12, they'd be a lot higher ranked and be talked for a conference championship. However, I think they're probably going to end the season around 8-4 or so. Get a decent bowl game and be looking forward to next year.
Do you think they stay in the top 25 all year? Or do you think they fall out of it?
They might fall out of it for a week or so. However, at the end of the day, you can't deny the talent on the field. The thing is that they're probably playing the hardest schedule in college football.
Oh, for sure.
They're in the toughest division, and they had to go on the road and play Clemson.
Yeah, that's brutal. I mean, anytime you have to play both Alabama and Clemson on the road, not even at neutral sites, you're going to struggle. I mean, those are probably 2 guaranteed losses already on your schedule with Auburn, that loss now, and you're still going to have to play LSU later in the season. I'm saying A&M's probably looking at 4 or 5 losses. They're staring it in the face.
Kansas State is coming off of a bye week. They travel to Oklahoma State next week. Very, very tough game. Oklahoma State did look pretty good in their loss against Texas. However, we can't deny that the road win against Mississippi State was a huge, huge result for the Wildcats.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Chaz. I mean, what's been surprising about K-State is that, they lost by 21 to Mississippi State at home last season. They got to hire Chris Kleiman, who's come in, and he seems to have energized the program for the first time in 7 or 8 years, ever since they lost that Fiesta Bowl to Oregon. What was their quarterback's name back then?
Colin Klein.
Colin Klein, yes. He was in the Heisman Trophy conversation that whole season. K-State made it up to number 2. Now, I'm not saying this K-State team's going to make it all the way to number 2, but they finally have a defense that's pretty safe. I mean, pretty secure. You can really...
It's one of the better ones in the Big 12. I know that's not saying much.
Yes.
However, they are a legit defense. They're probably, I'd say them, Texas, and probably Iowa State are the 3 best defenses in the Big 12. Maybe the 3 only competent defenses in the Big 12, but legit nonetheless. They held a Joe Moorhead offense to 24 points, I believe it was? Yes, 24 points.
Yeah, and same thing goes for Oklahoma State. I mean, the recipe for beating them is a lot like Washington State. If you can hold them under 28 points, you're probably going to win because their defense is guaranteed to give up more than 28 per game.
And, Kansas State's got themselves a quarterback. Skylar Thompson, he's an experienced quarterback, dual threat. He can throw. He's very efficient, which has been the difference this year from last. He hasn't thrown as many picks and made, the same mistakes as he's been making. And this is a team that, surprised me a lot. I wasn't sure what to get, being under a first-year head coach. And they've been phenomenal.
Yeah, they're shocking us right before our eyes. I mean, when people think of the Big 12, they're like, oh, Oklahoma immediately when it comes to football. Oklahoma. But maybe this sets up, okay, Kansas State possibly. If you could make a case that they could enter the top 15 this week, and now we're seeing like, okay, Oklahoma and Kansas State now, this is their conference now. It's not just Oklahoma.
Yeah, they can really make a statement and confirm what we saw on the field in Starkville a couple weeks ago and basically be like, yeah, we're legit. That wasn't a fluke. We are really this good of a football team. Moving on to UCF. Yeah, that was a bad loss.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Pitt did take Penn State, who we have pretty high in the rankings, and they're a good team. They did take them right to the end. However, that was a bad loss. Pitt is not a great football team. They went down big. They came back, to their credit, got a decent lead, and then just lost it again.
I mean, give credit to Pitt. I mean, some should say they should have beat Penn State that game, and they finally beat a ranked team, and it had to be UCF. This was not UCF football. They didn't stick to their game plan coming into the game, and it hurt them ultimately in the end. Pittsburgh took advantage of their mistakes, and they ended up winning a ball game in a tough, in a tough game.
I will say, Chaz, this is the most athletic Pittsburgh team I've seen in a while.
Kenny Pickett's probably the best Pitt quarterback.
Marquise French is a weapon offensively. For UCF, it had to happen at some point. They weren't going to go 10 years in a row without losing the regular season. And
they're not going to be the national champions.
No.
Thank you.
And so, and the thing is, they looked really impressive against LSU, even in a loss in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah.
Still put up 32. They beat Auburn, obviously, that one year, where they claimed
they're just not the same team without Mackenzie Milton.
But they're not, and that's the fact of the matter is that the leftovers from that national title team are walking out the door, or they're seniors, or they're in their third year already. So the recruiting on the back end with teams like that, you get 1 or 2 special teams every 10 to 15 years. And UCF had that. And now they're going to have to wait another 10 to 15 years.
I feel like they're going to be in this Boise State kind of cycle. Obviously, we have Boise State a little higher up. They're a little bit more of an established program. However, you had those great Chris Peterson years. Kellen Moore, who's now the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. And, the Sugar Bowl win, that Fiesta Bowl against TCU was just one of the best football games.
Oklahoma, yeah.
Oh, the Oklahoma, the trick play. I mean, those are some great Boise State teams. And then, they started to fall off. They bounce around the top 25, maybe making a push here and there. However, they're not really up in that national spotlight again.
Yeah, what really hurt Boise when you look at it is when they lost TCU, they lost their comparable rival in conference. Because for UCF, here's the problem with UCF, Chaz. UCF has 3 non-conference games to impress every year, like most teams in the American Conference or the Mountain West. They have 3 non-conference teams, so you schedule a Power 5 team, you beat them pretty soundly, like they did with Stanford, and all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, UCF,
and then you just beat the crap out of your entire conference.
Exactly, and you destroy your entire conference, and maybe that's good enough. But they're not looking at your conference. They're looking at what you did against that Power 5 opponent, which they handled Stanford pretty well, but then they lose to Pitt. They're done now. It doesn't matter if they beat every team in their conference by 80 points or more. They're done. I'm sorry, because they're going to look at...
They might get into a New Year's 6, and that's it.
They may even scrape into a New Year's 6, but I doubt it, because it doesn't matter what you do in the conference, because when I look at the American this year, I mean, Connecticut, it's not a very good schedule that they got lined up. East Carolina, Cincinnati maybe will be...
The best player decided to redshirt.
Exactly. So, I mean, that Houston game is obsolete now. South Florida, they're terrible. Tulane, mediocre at best, right? So
there's not a team in there that I would pick to beat any of the top 25 teams.
Absolutely. And so then you have to say, do they deserve to make it into a New Year's 6 bowl? No. None, in my opinion, no.
Probably
Even
not.
if they win out.
They're just not as good of a team as they were. At the end of the day, they're not. And yes, they do have some athletes. They have good coaching, despite Scott Frost going over to Nebraska. However, if they ever want to really make a push, they got to try and find their way into a Power 5. Like it's the way
they got to try and
the way college football works.
Yeah, it's like TCU. When TCU left the Mountain West and made it into the Big 12, not only did it take away a great rivalry between Boise State and TCU. Remember, that used to be a must-watch game.
Oh, absolutely. That Fiesta Bowl was one of the best games I can remember
Even
from
in the
growing
regular
up.
season, you had TCU with Andy Dalton versus Kellen Moore. What a game. Gary Patterson versus Chris Peterson. I mean, what a game to look forward to for a non-Power 5 conference. But when TCU, they left for the Big 12, that ended Boise State because then they have to go on the road to play teams, and they only get one shot a year. Whereas when they scheduled Florida State, remember, they don't make these schedules. It's not like the NFL. They don't make these schedules a year prior.
Oh, no, they're planned way in ahead.
6-7 years in the future. I mean, Arizona State is playing, LSU in like 13 years or something?
I think they're playing them in like 20, I think it's like 6 years.
Yeah, it's somewhere far in the future, though. So when Boise State signs on to play Florida State, they're talking about the defending national champion Florida State.
Exactly.
They're certainly not expecting to go on the road and play the dumpster fire that Willie Taggart's put on the field.
That program is probably the second most destructive program behind Tennessee. Who, I mean, that is just an absolute.
It's a joke.
I'm not even going to say the word that I think it is because I can't even, legally on air. I get in trouble for saying it, but they are an absolute crap fire.
Yeah,
it's a good word.
Yeah,
it was a good recovery. Yeah.
We know they suck.
Yeah.
Bottom line, we'll move into another team that sucked this past week. Michigan.
Capital S. Suck.
Yeah. Josh Gaddis doesn't seem to be working. I mean,
what
was this going to be?
You saw the game.
Jonathan Taylor, what happened?
Yeah.
I mean, Michigan, under Jim Harbaugh, what Michigan has done well, third and short, being physical. This year, they haven't done it. They've been trying to move to the spread offense, and yet it seems like they're kind of not going to the spread offense. Near the end of the game with Shea Patterson, they were finally throwing the ball down the field a bit, and then it just, But before that, there was just nothing.
It genuinely, Chaz, like I said, I'm a committed Michigan fan my whole life. I've watched this team. It genuinely looks like they have no idea what they're doing on the field. Like, I challenge people to go watch a Michigan game anytime from the past 3 years. 50% of the plays, go watch the receivers. Sometimes, I swear, they don't even run routes. They just jog off the line of scrimmage. They'll look around a little bit. And so Michigan, they'll run a play where they set up one route. It's a crossing route. If that's covered, they're doomed. That's Jim Harbaugh's offense. He's like, everyone, we're just running a decoy, and if this guy isn't open, throw it away. That is not a healthy way to run an offense. Send some guys down the field. You have 6'5" receivers like Nico Collins.
They are really talented receivers on that team.
Unbelievably talented receivers.
They're NFL receivers.
Absolutely. I'd say the three of them, the trio of Donovan Peoples-Jones, who is one of the highest recruited receiving players Michigan's had since Braylon Edwards, Nico Collins, who right now seems to be the most polished out of the bunch, and then an injury-plagued Tariq Black, who
didn't play a lot last year.
Was their best receiver before he broke his foot his freshman year 2 years ago, broke his other foot, his left foot, last year, and that's what sidelined him for most of the year. So this is really the first full year Tariq Black's gotten to get going. But he made a nice grab, or an almost nice grab against Wisconsin that was called back, and then the very next play, Shea Patterson got strip sacked. There's 2 points I want to make, though, Chaz, and I want to ask you about this. What is wrong with Michigan's quarterbacks? None of them that Jim Harbaugh has recruited have developed one bit. Shea Patterson has regressed. Dylan McCaffrey came in. He was supposed to be the next best thing. He has not looked that good. And behind them, they have Joe Milton and Cade McNamara, but I don't really see them progressing that much either.
Yeah, I've been so disappointed in Shea Patterson. When I heard he was transferring to Michigan, I was like, it's going to be it. Jim Harbaugh's finally got him. Shea Patterson.
Yeah.
We saw what he did at Ole Miss. 5-star. Great at IMG.
Yes.
And then it felt like last year the shackles were on him playing in, the offense that they were playing in, just straight downhill, only play action.
Yeah.
And there'd be 2 receivers against 5 defensive backs because they knew it'd be coming.
Yep.
And this year, it seems like they're confused. Every single time Shea Patterson drops back to throw, it feels like he's hesitating. He doesn't know what Gaddis wants out of them. He's basically under pressure every single time he drops back to pass. He's been hurt the whole year. McCaffrey, same thing. He got pulled out of the game after a targeting call, if I'm not mistaken.
He got massacred.
Yeah, that was
play.
Yeah, that was a bad hit. Anyway, it seems like they don't know what they want to do.
Yeah, and then on the defensive side, and Nick, you can agree with this, I swear that Ohio State game took their soul as a defensive unit. They ran 6 crossing routes for touchdowns.
I can agree with that. I mean, it just all falls under Shea and Jim Harbaugh. Sorry. As an Ohio State fan, it's easy to root against Michigan. I've been doing it for years, and I'll keep doing it. I was rooting against them against Wisconsin, but I was rooting for Michigan at the end of the game just to make it even close. Like, I was excited for this game. I wanted this game to go down to maybe an overtime game, or I wanted a Shea Patterson drive or Jonathan Taylor explosive run, which we got, but it wasn't close. It's just not I'm not even excited for the Michigan-Ohio State game anymore.
Oh, I think there's a good chance it's not going to be quite as bad as last year.
No.
Just because that was
Don't say that.
That was I think that I don't know. The defenses are the difference. Anyway, Khaleke Hudson was absolutely atrocious in this game. I don't know if I've ever seen a linebacker who's had so much hype and so much talent that just does not know how to shoot a gap or cover. Like, they'd run a play action, and there'd be, a running back or a tight end into the flat, and he wouldn't follow him. It'd be his assignment. His eyes would be straight on the quarterback, first down. On the one where, Cone had that 30-yard run?
Unreal how a quarterback like that can run 30 yards on touch.
He was turned around. Hudson was absolutely atrocious. Those Michigan linebackers, what are they doing?
And the problem, Chaz, is you have guys who are actually pretty polished and pretty good on that defense still, like Lavert Hill. Mm-hmm. Lavert Hill is a solid cornerback.
He'll be in the NFL.
I think he's going to turn into a pretty good NFL player. The one thing that Michigan's been able to do consistently is churn out solid corners. They've Blake Countess has become an NFL player. Jordan Lewis has become an NFL player. They get their guys drafted.
Don Brown is a very good defensive coordinator. There's no denying that.
But, I mean, there are times where it just looks like Michigan doesn't know what they're doing when the ball is snapped, both on offense and on defense. That Jonathan Taylor 68-yard run, I'm sorry, he made one cut. One cut. It wasn't even a trick play either. It was a handoff, and he made a cut to the left, and both Khalid Hudson and Josh Metellus ran into the wrong gaps. They were caught with their eyes in the backfield, and they ran into the wrong gap. They didn't even notice that Jonathan Taylor had made the cut, really. And by the time he reached top gear, he was gone.
And this isn't like this is some confusing offense that Wisconsin's out there running.
No, it's power football.
Exactly. You should know where the play's going to go. There's no misdirection. Even when they're running play action, it's not a ton of, there's no gimmicks in what they're running. They're going to try and smash you in the mouth and run it up your throat.
No,
and that's exactly what they did.
I mean, Wisconsin is as advertised. And if you can't stop that, Michigan looked nowhere near prepared to stop that. And it's shameful, and I hate to use this word because it's thrown around way too much in sports, but it's pathetic.
No, it is pathetic. They did not show up to play. I don't see any, fire
Urgency.
in that Michigan team. Urgency, fire.
Yeah.
There's no drive. And Jim Harbaugh, hot seat?
Yeah. If he loses, I'll put it this way. If he loses to Penn State and Michigan State, he's gone.
But we hear this every year, I feel like.
No, because here's the thing. If you actually boil Jim Harbaugh's tenure down.
He's been so much better than what's been before.
2015, they're a incredibly stupid fumbled punt away from a Rose Bowl berth.
That's true.
How about 2016? They're, a foot away from the college football playoff? 2017, that was a down year. But that was a transition year where his recruits were getting in. A lot of injuries. Wilton Spate went down with a neck injury. John O'Corn, the worst quarterback I've ever seen, came in. He was atrocious. Then 2018, they come in. They lose a bad game against Notre Dame, but they looked great against Wisconsin, looked amazing against Penn State. They're rolling into the Ohio State game. They're ready to take the world by storm. This is it, 2018, the revenge tour, and they got smoked. They got blown off the field. And they looked timid in that game. They looked nothing like the team that had rolled over Wisconsin.
It's just, since that game, they just have not been the same team.
No, I think, like I said, Chaz, I think that game legitimately took their soul. Because they haven't shown any fire. Jim Harbaugh, the guy on the 49ers sideline who used to throw his papers a mile across the field, he looks, I don't want to say disinterested.
Defeated.
But he looks defeated. I mean, that's the thing, is that he looks like it doesn't seem like the team is listening to him anymore.
Yeah, so that's definitely going to be one to watch. I mean, if they don't beat Ohio State next year, I don't know if he's going to get fired this year. Although next year, I think there's going to be a furnace.
The seat's getting hot.
Underneath his
One
seat.
last point I want to make. I don't know if you saw this. Shea Patterson's brother took to Instagram and ripped Jim Harbaugh to shreds. He called him a terrible coach. He said he's a failure. He's lost the locker room. One interesting thing to notice, Nico Collins liked the post. Michigan wide receiver liked the post, tearing the coaching staff to shreds.
He's lost the
saying it's
locker
not
room.
The player's fault. I think that's the first sign that he's starting to lose the locker room, which could, I'd say, expedite his process.
Absolutely. I think Josh Gaddis probably's got to go. I mean, although on the same field, I just said that, and now I'm thinking, when you commit to a completely change in the offensive system, you got to fully commit, and they haven't done that.
No.
And it's just, I don't know. It's very frustrating watching Michigan. We're going to move on for time constraints, though. We'll get back to that Wisconsin-Michigan game later down the road. Back to the rankings. At number 20, we have Virginia, 19, USC, 18, Utah, 17, Boise State, and number 16, Washington. Virginia escaped the upset against Old Dominion.
Didn't look great. I mean, it's Old Dominion. When you say those words that they escaped an upset, it doesn't sound the best. And it's coming from a team that coming into the season wasn't as looked on. I mean, I feel like now they're starting to find their groove, but that they just didn't look good against Old Dominion, in my opinion.
I mean, with Virginia, the only reason Virginia is as high as I think they are in our rankings and in the AP Top 25, is somebody from the ACC's got to be up there besides Clemson. And they have to put someone in there because the whole ACC is terrible outside of Clemson. I cannot name one solid put-together team. Clemson and Virginia, if they played tomorrow, Clemson would mop the floor with them. I mean,
there's no doubt.
Syracuse is terrible. Syracuse, we thought Syracuse would actually field a competitive team this year. They got waxed by Maryland, who, in my opinion, is, the 8th best team in the Big Ten right now?
Probably, and, I mean, the second best team that I've seen on the field might be North Carolina, and they have an inconsistent freshman quarterback.
That's tough.
That's the thing. There's no other team in there. Virginia hasn't looked great, but at the end of the day, they're 4-0.
Yeah.
They're undefeated. And that's all you can do.
They haven't been pretty, but
they've beaten the team in front of them. Perkins, dual threat guy. He was very good last year. We know what he can do. Bronco Mendenhall, I think he's a pretty good head coach. Wouldn't say he's, in the top tier of guys, but he's in that, second or third tier of good, solid coaches. They'll get you 8 wins every year. Maybe every once in a while push for a New Year's Six bowl game. Moving on to USC. I mean, the talent is unreal on this team.
As always.
Third-string quarterback Matt Fink. I've always liked Matt Fink. I grew up a USC fan. Dual threat. He offers something different than JT Daniels and Keaton Slovis offered with his ability to run the ball. However, he threw the ball really well against Utah, and they were better than Utah from the first minute until the last minute. They were a better team.
This just hurts. Obviously, props to USC. They were unranked last week.
Mm-hmm.
They finally jumped back into it. But I think as a whole, this kind of just hurts the Pac-12. Some would argue, okay, this brings in another Pac-12 team that's competitive. But no, we thought Utah was the best team in the Pac-12 coming into the season, and they're off to a hot start, this and that. And now we see another unranked Pac-12 team come and beat Utah. And now it's okay, now we're back at square one. We don't even know who the best team in the Pac-12 is anymore.
You see, Nakash, you say that it hurts the Pac-12 as a whole. I agree with you. The one thing I think it does help, though, we do go to Arizona State. That game may have saved ASU's chances to win the Pac-12 because if Washington, I still believe that Utah, I still believe that Utah would beat ASU, and it's tough for ASU to lose at home to Colorado. But remember, USC, they're going to lose their fair share of games just because
their quarterback room is an absolute mess right now.
Yeah, they're a walking hospital room.
Yeah.
In terms of their quarterback. And you look at the rest of the Pac-12 South, UCLA, who knows what they are right now. Mm-hmm. Arizona, they're not good enough. So it's really coming down to the 3 teams of ASU, Utah, and Colorado, with USC being the wild card.
I think USC is probably, I'd pick them over Colorado strictly based on talent.
Mm-hmm.
USC probably has the most underrated receiving corps in the entire country. Michael Pittman Jr., legit NFL receiver. He's 6'4", fast as hell, can go up and grab any single ball in the air. He reminds me a lot of a lesser version of Mike Evans.
Yeah.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, complete burner.
Yeah.
5-star recruit a year ago.
He's their Marquise Lee.
Exactly. Absolute burner. Tyler Vaughns, former number 1 receiver in the entire country. Probably, arguably the most talented, most well-rounded receiver out of the group. He kind of combines both of them in terms of speed and size.
He's their Robert Woods.
Exactly. And Pittman Jr. is a better David Osbury.
Yeah.
It's just, they got 2 running backs. It just makes you wonder, what if
JT Daniels
it did not go down? Because I think with JT Daniels, they don't lose that BYU game.
He did not.
Because, yes, he made a lot of mistakes his freshman year. However, when we saw him against Fresno State, JT looked like he'd taken that step forward.
I really liked him against Notre Dame last year, too.
Exactly.
I thought he was going to win them that game.
He almost did.
And so, with JT Daniels, now, the emphasis goes to his junior year. But, when it comes down to USC, like I said, they're out of the running in terms of the Pac-12, but you know, I mean, they've done enough to deserve their ranking. You know, they've had some pretty good wins.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see what Slovis's injury is. They haven't completely disclosed that. It's still out indefinitely, so no one really knows what's going to happen. For the time now, it's going to be Matt Fink. I think that means they're going to go to a more run-based offense, which doesn't really hurt them because they got Stephen Carr and Vivek Malapaya, two very talented running backs. It's just not necessarily what Graham Harrell would be prefer, to run. However, we'll move on to Utah. They didn't look good. They got a great defensive line. Zach Moss is a really good running back. But Tyler Huntley, again, showed a lack of ability to throw the ball down the field in key moments.
Yeah, I mean, it is hard to rank a team coming off a loss to USC above USC. But, again, it is Utah's first loss of the season. But with all the hype coming in, guys, this was a crushing loss for Utah. It sets them way back.
They're out of the playoff picture.
Without a doubt.
Way out. I mean,
and they might have just lost the Pac-12.
At this point, the competition for the Pac-12, like it has been for the past 3 to 4 years, is who's making it to Pasadena. Mm-hmm. And at the present time, I couldn't give you a leader in the clubhouse, and I don't want to put my foot in my mouth here, but right now it's Cal. If you can believe that, the California Golden Bears are the leader in the clubhouse.
Oh, absolutely.
In the Pac-12, which
undefeated.
Is remarkable. But when you look at Utah, man, they've got, you really didn't expect them to lose that game. And now, no matter what the talent is, Chaz, can you guarantee him another win? That's the trouble.
I don't know.
That's the problem
Here's
with the Pac-12.
Here's the thing with the Pac-12. There's no team that's so much better than everybody else.
Or so much worse.
Exactly. They're all, UCLA's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And Oregon State. Oregon State's horrible.
Oregon State's the one team I would guarantee a win. But, I mean, how can you say UCLA when they just put up,
That's true.
67?
I think UCLA's a bad team, and yet they did, like you said, 67 points. They got Chip Kelly as their head coach.
Yeah.
Dorian Thompson-Robinson's, as bad as he's been, extremely, extremely talented. The Pac-12 is just so middle. They beat the crap out of each other. That's their problem.
Yep.
I mean, they are a conference of cannibals, not a conference of champions. That's the way to describe it. They eat each other.
Exactly. And the thing is, it feels like this is what happens to the Pac-12 if USC is not.
No, what the Pac-12 has needed and what they've lost since the decline of Oregon, since Mariota, is they've lost that dominating team.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Pac-12, let's be honest, even when it was the Pac-10, I mean, you grew up a USC fan.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in the Bay Area. I mean, we understand how it goes. There was always that one team
USC had
so much better than everyone else.
Stanford had a couple of years. Oregon had a couple of years.
Oregon had a while.
Oregon had a great run.
Exactly, and it seemed like USC would always be, even in those Stanford and Oregon years,
for sure.
every once in a while they'd have a really good team that'd be able to rival them.
But everyone besides that was kind of mediocre. So
Exactly.
you'd have that one exceptional team that would just steamroll everyone on their way to
Washington
the Rose Bowl,
had a good year.
the title game, the playoff like Oregon did the first time around. Since Oregon's fallen off, we thought Washington was going to take their place with Chris Peterson. That has not turned out. And so now you have this power vacuum where there's not a dominant team, but there's not a bad team.
Mm-hmm.
And really, like, when I look at the Utah schedule, Aaron Gordon just threw for 9 touchdowns. How can you guarantee that Utah's going to beat Washington State this Saturday
can't
night?
guarantee any wins in the Pac-12 this season,
Exactly.
except for maybe against
Oregon State.
Oregon State.
Oregon State, yep.
It's going to be interesting to see. There might be a 2-loss, a 10-2 versus a 9-3 Pac-12 championship game to see who goes to the Rose Bowl.
I'm down.
And those might be 2 really good teams that might beat maybe a Big Ten champion. It's possible.
It is possible. I mean, we had a Washington team that a lot of people said was overrated that went in and they gave Ohio State a run for their money last season in the Rose Bowl. So, whoever comes
Why
out
don't
of
we
the
talk
Pac-12,
about Washington right now?
well, let's transition.
The Cal loss, it was a weird circumstance. They played at 2 a.m. is when the game finished. It was lightning and everything. However, Chris Peterson, like we said, we know he's a really damn good coach. Jacob Eason, extremely, extremely talented. Possibly the second most talented passer in the entire country behind Trevor Lawrence.
Just by raw talent.
That's what I'm saying. The guy has an absolute cannon. He's just inconsistent with his accuracy and decision-making.
And that's what led him to lose the job to Jake Fromm, obviously, is that Fromm
Exactly.
is a much more consistent game manager. And I think, we'll get up higher in the rankings, obviously, and we'll break down the Georgia-Notre Dame game. But I mean, if I'm being honest, Chaz, if Jacob Eason is the quarterback of Georgia, they lose that game. Because he probably makes one or two just boneheaded interceptions where he's not going to wow you. He's not going to chuck the ball down the field for 75 yards a pop. But he's going to manage the ball. He's going to keep the chains moving. Eason's that kind of firecracker quarterback. He's one of those guys that he can nail it 80 yards down the field, but he can also miss those underneath slant routes that kind of makes you scratch your head. And he did against Cal, but then, something that restored my faith is, their 45-19 win over BYU.
Yeah, and that's a BYU team that beat USC. Obviously, Slovis made a couple bad mistakes. They beat them more than Utah beat them. The Pac-12 is the Pac-12.
Yep.
They just beat each other.
That's really all the analysis I have on Washington.
We'll move on to number 15. Cal, another Pac-12 team. Again, good teams, not great. They have a great defense. What's his name? Justin Wilcox, former USC defensive coordinator, can really coach defense. He is a really good defensive coordinator. Their linebacker, I believe, is leading the country in tackles. He's getting like 15 a game or something stupid like that.
21 against Ole Miss.
Yeah, what's his name?
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
right.
Dude, the guy is just. I think he had like 17
his
against
name
Washington.
Is Evan Weaver.
Evan Weaver.
22 against Ole Miss.
That is
You gotta be
unreal.
kidding me.
That is unreal. However, the offense is. I don't know how much I trust Chase Garbers.
It's always a slugfest with Cal, I feel like.
Exactly.
Ever since the Jared Goff days, it's always just been like mediocre. They're not gonna wow you on offense, obviously. We've been through those Aaron Rodgers, Marshawn Lynch, Jared Goff days, but now we're getting to like the strict okay, pound the ball and we're just gonna play some defense, and they showed that against Washington, limiting them to 19 points.
It seems like they're Wisconsin without Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, they don't have that offensive weapon, and that may hurt them in some games.
That's what I'm saying.
Because, I mean, like you said, Nick, I really like their defense. They're holding guys to, like a Washington to 19 points. But again, that was an interesting set of circumstances, to say the least, in what they played that game under, where it finished at 2 a.m., players are tired, so you have to account for that. That they only scored 23 against North Texas is a bit concerning, and I think
it's really concerning.
When they do go up against Arizona State, I know Arizona State's going to be on the road. We all know that ASU struggles on the road, but ASU does have a good defense. If they can
grind out a game. We saw what they did to Michigan State.
If they can get into a rock fight with Cal, it all depends on who has the biggest stone. In my opinion, that's Benjamin. So it could be a tough week for Cal.
Exactly. They got to play USC this season as well.
Yep.
USC probably going to be a dogfight again. USC's got the players on the outside. They got Stephen Carr. They got players, the playmakers, to be able to beat them. And I don't know if Cal has that game changer on offense that can just.
They simply don't.
They don't. That's the problem.
I don't think Garbers is the quarterback that's going to get him over the hump in Eugene against Oregon or in Salt Lake against Utah.
Yeah. We'll see. They're a darn good team. Moving on. We'll go 14 through 11 now. 14, we had Iowa. 13, another Pac-12 team in the middle of the pack.
Boy.
Oregon. Number 12, Penn State. And number 11, Florida. Iowa. Another one of those ground and pound teams.
Yeah.
It just seems like we're seeing some of those incomplete teams that have something they're really, really good at, and then they just struggle on the other side of the ball.
What is the analysis about Iowa every year? I feel like you can take out the players, you can change the players, but two things always stay the same. Number one, Kirk Ferentz always puts together a competitive team. Number two, Iowa always has, believe it or not, like a semi-competent quarterback. Every time, was it Jake Rudock? Was it C.J. Beathard? Nate Stanley? Mm-hmm. Their quarterbacks, they're not going to wow you. They're not going to throw for 9 touchdowns in a game, but they've always been pretty good, and they've turned in, like Beathard, they've turned into professional athletes. And I think that's, that's the best compliment you can give. That's the best compliment you can give because, again, only 10% of collegiate football players make it to the NFL. So
I think it's 2%.
Yeah, it's something way lower than most people would expect.
Yeah.
And so to have, their last 3 quarterbacks probably heading into the NFL, that's something to say.
Exactly. Nate Stanley might be the most talented of all of them.
However,
the thing I have, or the issue that I have with Stanley, is over the last couple of years, in the big moments, he makes poor decisions. Mm-hmm. I think it was 2 years in a row against Penn State that they had the ball inside the 20-yard line, and he could not get it done 2 years in a row.
Yeah, I mean, they were, and here's the thing I always have to say about Iowa. Kinnick Stadium, man, you just cannot win a night game on the road. I mean, Penn State won by the skin of their teeth, but, I mean, we all remember Michigan going in, ranked number 2,
They
the best
beat
Harbaugh
the
team.
absolute crap out of Ohio State a couple years ago.
Oh, they destroyed Ohio State a couple years ago, and so it's tough to win on the road in Iowa City. And, so when you look at, okay, well, they're going to play Michigan on the road. We don't know how good Michigan is right now. That's going to be the next test game for Michigan is in actually 2 weeks. So then they host Penn State. That's tough. You're on the road against Wisconsin. But after that, I like the remainder of their schedule. Host Minnesota, host Illinois, on the road at Nebraska. This could be an 8-9 win Iowa team.
Exactly, and it really helps that they're in the weaker Big Ten division.
Yes.
However, this is a classic Iowa team. Like, they play defense. Sargent's a decent running back. Stanley's talented but inconsistent, makes some bad decisions at times. I think they're a good team. Do I think they're going to be pushing for the playoff? No. Do I think if they make it to the championship game, which they very well might, if they're able to beat Wisconsin?
Yeah, it all comes down to that game.
Exactly. Do I think they'd make it into the playoff even? No. But they're a good team.
I just feel like they're always that average, I don't even know if average is the right word, but they always just play spoiler. We saw it with Ohio State last year. We see them they're not a team that's flashy. They're not a team that will wow you. But they're always that team that will come away with 2 or 3 big wins at the end of the year, and then the following year we'll be like, okay, do they deserve to be in the top 25? Will they beat X, X, and X? Oh, well, they deserve to be here, here, and here. And they're always just that team that just I don't know, they're just annoying.
Yeah, I mean,
coming from Big Ten.
My comparison for my last point, Chaz, is that they are the Oklahoma State of the Big Ten. They'll lose a few games you don't think they should, and then they'll go out and they'll beat a few teams you don't think that they should.
Yeah.
And they end up 8-4. They make a bowl game. They play an SEC team. They either win that game or they lose that game, and they start out number 23.
And then every couple of years they got a team that's pushing.
You could compare them to Arizona State even.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, a lot of times ASU, they'll lose games that'll make you scratch your head, and they'll win some games, on the road in East Lansing.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
That's what we thought this week.
Moving from a smash mouth team to much more of a flashy team.
And
at 13, we got the Oregon Ducks.
That's true.
Another one of those teams.
And the Pac-12.
Not quite sure what we get. Although, I think actually that's a lie. I saw a lot of the Oregon against Auburn.
Yeah,
Their offensive line is legit.
Yep.
Justin Herbert is a good
him.
quarterback. It's a little bit concerning, his efficiency so far this season. However, you can't deny the guy's talent. He can make every throw on the football field. He's got playmakers around him. Defense is still the question mark.
Yeah, I mean, this was a guy a couple years ago that was projected to go as high as number 5 if he had been able to go the draft after his sophomore season. Had a great sophomore season, took a step back last year, and I think that concerned a lot of people, and it concerned himself enough to come back for his senior season. But this has been, Chaz, the best Oregon has looked to me since the Mariota year.
That's fair, yeah.
They went on the road. They played Stanford well. Now they're going to host Cal, and we're going to see – they're going to host Cal in 2 weeks. They're on a bye this week. So it'll be interesting to see if Cal's able to beat ASU. Cal's going to be ranked probably –
around
12th or higher. They're gonna gain because a lot of these teams
are gonna play each other.
Are gonna start play each other and lose. If Cal's able to beat ASU, all of a sudden we've got ourselves a marquee Pac-12 matchup, boys.
But if ASU wins, does that set up a potential
big matchup in a couple weeks?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
All these middle of the pack rankings, and even towards the top, where we have all these teams that have looked great early. Once conference play starts, going around. We're going to start seeing them, start to play each other. Teams are going to start falling. Some teams are going to separate themselves. So, yeah. Moving on to 12 and 11, Penn State and Florida. Penn State, I had them a little bit lower than this. We'll get to that later. However, I have not been impressed with them this season. They're talented. They've gotten the job done. However, they have not been convincing.
They haven't given you a reason to be.
Exactly. However, they haven't really played
That's true.
a meaningful Big Ten game yet.
That's true. Their weaknesses will come out when they play the Big Ten powerhouses. I feel like you can tell what they're good and bad at, but I think ultimately it'll come down to these games against the Big Ten powerhouses. I don't know when they play these Big Ten powerhouses, but their weaknesses will come out, and it'll be bad. It won't be bad. I just think we'll see the real Penn State.
I think Trace McSorley was an outlier when you look at Penn State.
Oh, for
I
sure.
think they've never really put phenomenal quarterbacks out on the field, and I think Sean Clifford is more of the prototypical Nittany Lions quarterback. He's going to take care of the ball, but he's not going to wow you. They really like to rely on their defense.
Reminds me a lot of Matt McGloin.
He's a Matt McGloin type of guy. He's mobile enough. He makes a few throws. He can run the bootleg off the play action, but he's not the McSorley. This isn't the McSorley-Barkley backfield anymore.
They don't even have a Miles Sanders anymore.
No, they don't have a playmaker.
Jordy
on
Brown's
their
a
team.
decent running back, but he's only got 175 yards and 2 tutties in the first 3 games of the season that they've played.
And they played
They
no
played
names.
Pitt, who,
Okay.
to be fair,
Okay. That's respectable.
Pitt did just beat a pretty good UCF team, who we do have ranked at 22.
Yes,
However, that is a game they probably should have lost.
I agree. And that's a home game. And it's tough to lose home games in Happy Valley and consider yourself a top-tier team.
It's true.
Yeah, I have a feeling this is going to be a team that's going to start, losing some games as the Big Ten
We're
play
gonna see their
starts.
true colors.
Once the crux of the schedule hits, because in my opinion, outside the SEC West, there's no bigger schedule grind than the Big Ten East.
Yeah.
Because every year, whether you're Ohio State, Michigan, or Michigan State, or Penn State, you've got to play the other 3 guys.
Exactly, and any of them on any given day, no matter how
That's a
bad of a
gauntlet.
year you're having, they have the talent to go and get a result.
That's a gauntlet. So Penn State, they host Michigan, but on the road at Ohio State, I don't give them a chance in a lifetime to win that game. So I'm gonna go out and guarantee them 2 losses already.
Already at number 11, Florida. Their pass rush and their front 7 is absolutely legit.
Disgusting.
Scarlett's a decent running back. However, with Felipe Franks going down, Kyle Trask is decent. He's been okay.
Yeah.
He beat Kentucky.
Yeah.
However, it's just offensively they don't scare me.
We've all got
not
our
bad.
hands up. Just kind of, there's a collective feeling in the room of just, what is Florida?
What's their identity?
What is their identity? I never thought Felipe Franks was that good to begin with. Miami is a dumpster fire, and they barely beat them. They had to come back against Kentucky, who I don't think is all that good. So, they really had to come back against Kentucky. And so, they beat Tennessee.
Obviously.
Horrible Tennessee game. But, again, I break down the rest of their schedule. Host Auburn, I don't think they're going to win that game. On the road at LSU, no chance.
No chance.
They host Georgia, no chance. And then maybe they beat Missouri, Florida State.
Yeah.
So they're going to end up 9-3, just like every Florida team of the past 10
The
years.
fact that you're saying maybe against Florida State and Missouri is concerning to me.
Well, it's just Florida State is like, it's going to be one of those Brady Hoke, Michigan, Ohio State games where there's no way in hell that they should be able to be there with them. But
in a rivalry game, anything can happen.
Really, if you looked at the numbers, how could Arizona be beating Arizona State by 19 in the fourth quarter last year?
They shouldn't be.
It's a rivalry game, and rivalry games bring out the best.
Yeah. And that's my mistake. I meant to say LaMichael Pirine, not Scarlett. Scarlett graduated this past year. But yeah, Florida, without Felipe Franks, I don't think they can go and beat those big top dogs.
Yeah.
I like Kyle Trask. However, I think he's untested and as inconsistent as Felipe Franks was. At times, the guy could make an unbelievable throw.
Plays,
yeah, exactly. The guy could make incredible plays. Like take the Michigan Bowl game a year ago.
Played great.
Exactly. He won them that game. His
great.
play was the reason they won that game. And then at times he'll throw a bonehead interception. But again, he beat LSU last year.
Yes.
Without that, I don't see it. Getting into the top 10 now. We'll go 10 through 7 before we reveal our own individual ones. At 10, we got Texas. Number 9, Notre Dame. Number 8, Auburn. And number 7, Wisconsin. Texas. They lost to LSU, who's, in my opinion, has been the most impressive team so far this season, but that's a good football team. Sam Ehlinger's a legit quarterback. He's got some playmakers. Cam Johnson, big guy, can go up and get the football. Got a defense. Tom Herman's a good coach.
Man, I love Texas. I love Texas football. You know, growing up watching Texas with Colt McCoy, that was a phenomenal team, but they're back. I think we can say it with confidence that they can do it, you know? That what Sam Ehlinger declared in the Superdome last year is true. I mean, they lost the home game to LSU, but that was a winnable game for them.
Exactly. 2 drop passes.
Yeah.
4th and goal.
I mean, they gave up, what was it, the 3rd and 17?
Exactly.
You stop them short of the sticks, you get an offensive chance to drive down
Win the game.
And win the game. Again, anytime you can put up 38 against an LSU defense, that's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And Texas, they can put points on the board. The problem is they're not DBU like they claim to be. Their back end really concerns me. Defensively, I think Tom Herman's team is lacking a little bit. But like you said, they got playmakers, man. Colin Johnson, he played just down the road from where I went to high school at Valley Christian High School in San Jose. Kid was an absolute stud. And I knew that he'd play this well at the college level, but I really just, when you look at the rise of Texas under Tom Herman with Sam Ehlinger, Chaz, it all starts for me in that USC loss a couple years ago.
Oh, exactly. Sam Ehlinger was absolutely incredible in that game.
They seem to grow as a team.
Exactly.
Night.
The reason they lost that game was because of the greatness of Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
And Sam Darnold is the only reason Clay Helton is still the coach of
Still
USC.
has his job, yeah.
Sam Darnold literally brought them a Rose Bowl. I mean, they should have beaten an Ohio State team in that Sugar Bowl. However, play calling really hurt them in that game.
Yep.
However, it's just, yeah, like you said, that Texas team they're a damn good football team.
I'm excited for them, honestly. Sam Ehlinger is one of the most exciting players in college football, in my opinion. He just does things that a normal quarterback shouldn't.
He's Tim Tebow, but maybe not as good.
Tim Tebow and the burnt orange.
Maybe
Exactly.
Maybe just not.
I
as
think he's
fast.
actually a more natural thrower than Tim Tebow.
Yeah, and he's not as.
He's
good
just
as a runner.
not quite of a runner.
Yeah,
exactly.
okay, good. Yeah.
But in the same mold of, you know, not the best thrower, not the best athlete,
Yep.
but he's a winner.
Oh
Yep.
yeah, this
He's
kid
a
can
winner.
ball.
He's a winner.
We've seen it. I mean,
Going from one winner to another one of my favorite players in college football, Auburn and Bo Nix. Bo Nix hasn't been great. However, in the clutch, I've been saying it all year, the man's got that clutch gene. And it seems like a lot of these freshman quarterbacks do.
Yeah, Bo Nix, man. I mean, I was skeptical about Bo Nix. I didn't think he looked all that great in the Oregon game, but he put the doubters to sleep against Texas A&M. That's a tough place to play, Kyle Field. And something that I always bring up when I talk college football, home field advantage doesn't necessarily matter unless it's the playoffs in the NFL. Home field advantage matters in college
Oh,
football.
my God.
sure.
Yeah, Kyle Field is the biggest stadium in the SEC.
It is incredibly tough. When we talk about the toughest places to play, you always want to rank Death Valley, Clemson, and LSU. I really like those as like my 1 and 2. But outside of that, I mean, Kyle Field, you know, the Horseshoe,
Bryant Denny.
Happy Valley.
the big house.
The
Big
Big
House
House,
is tough.
Madison.
Madison's tough. You know, so I mean, but Kyle Field, it is tough to go into
That's one of
Kyle
them,
Field
yeah.
and win. Bo Nix looks really impressive.
Oh, 100%. This season, he's completing 53.8% of his passes. A little bit concerning. He kind of forces the ball in there every once in a while. He's got 645 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 picks. He's missed a couple throws. However, I mean, the guy, in crunch time, he's at his best.
Oh, I mean, it seems like he's one of those guys that doesn't
Get phased.
really get phased by the situation. You know, he doesn't really feel the weight of the moment. I mean, as evidenced by that incredible touchdown pass late in the game against Oregon. And so, you know, when it comes down to Bo Nix, he may save Gus Malzahn's job.
Gus Malzahn back on play calling. I think that's actually huge for the development of Bo Nix. They got a really good running back in Jatarvius. Sorry, weird name. A little bit changing now. Whitlow, big guy, powerful between the tackles. And like I said, I love Bo Nix. Grew up a big Auburn fan, living the dream, and the guy he's got it. He's got the clutch gene. He has it.
Yep.
He's got that special something.
Yeah.
Not everyone has it, but you can see it in it. He's not quite as polished as we saw Trevor Lawrence last year, but he's He's a winner.
Here's the important thing. Auburn gets Alabama at home this year.
Mm-hmm.
Bo Nix, we like to say the special gene. Crazier things have happened to Jordan Hare. Alabama, they've been giving up points lately. You know, who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Don't be surprised.
The one problem with Auburn, they got to play LSU and they got to play Alabama.
It's the SEC West.
Exactly.
It's a gauntlet.
just
They can beat LSU.
Yeah.
But LSU can also trash them.
moving on to another team that doesn't have to go quite through the same gauntlet. Wisconsin. I think they were incredible, though. Like, I mean, they literally blew out Michigan. They were better in all phases of the game. They ran rampant over them between the tackles, in the trenches, absolutely all over the field. Paul Chryst has done an amazing job. Jonathan Taylor, possibly the best player in the country.
As an Ohio State fan, I'm scared. Like, I do not want to see these guys when they're at their. I mean, we saw them at their best, I think, against Michigan. I mean, that guys at Michigan wasn't even ranked, and they just took them to the ground. They did everything they wanted to do, and they made Michigan look uncomfortable. We talked about it before. Jonathan Taylor is probably the best player in the country, and as a Big Ten fan, I'm just scared. And Wisconsin could just be running away with this as we speak.
Here's the thing about Wisconsin. For the first 10 quarters that they played, they didn't allow a single point. And yeah, you can say, well, I mean, yeah, they played South Florida and Central Michigan, but, you know, I think a lot of people expected Michigan to at least give them a fight. The only thing for me is that I'd say the jury's still out on Wisconsin because I don't think Michigan is all that impressive right now.
That is true.
We spoke about them. Their locker room is a mess. They don't seem inspired. The coaches seem defeated. So they ran over a team that's in a lot of turmoil. When Wisconsin rolls in to play Ohio State October 26th.
That's when we're going to really see if they're ready to take that national step.
That's going to be a top 10 matchup because Wisconsin's their schedule coming up. They host Northwestern, they host Kent State, they host Michigan State, they go on the road to Illinois. Those are all wins in my opinion. When they go on the road to Ohio State, we're going to have to see if Ohio State can bottle up Jonathan Taylor.
I'm scared for that game. I'll tell you that.
That will be definitely one of the biggest games of the season. We got to see whether or not Jack Cohn can continue to develop as a passer. Moving on now to the top. Oh, actually, no. I lied. We're going to reveal our own rankings. So, Jack, we'll start with you.
All right.
What were the differences you had in your rankings? We all had the same top 25. It kind of seemed like there was not really anyone on the outside looking in that really was screaming.
We need to get in. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, do you want me to read from 6 down to 1? Or just...
Just say, you can read 25 to 1 if you want.
25 to 1? Okay. So, I'll go pretty much like I said. It's really similar from 25 down to 7. So, I had A&M at number 25, Michigan State at 24, Kansas State 23. Michigan was my 22nd ranked team. I don't think Michigan deserves to be in the top 25 because I would put Michigan up against any top 25 team, and I think they get smoked. But
right now, yes.
But I would still say with the talent on their team, they're capable of winning big games, so they stay in this week. USC at 21, UCF at 20, and then 19 through 15, Virginia, Utah, Washington, Boise State, and Cal. 14 through 10, Iowa, Oregon, Penn State, Florida, and Texas. And then I had Notre Dame, number 9, Auburn at number 8, Wisconsin at number 7, and then obviously we'll talk about the differences we had, but I had Ohio State at number 6, Oklahoma at number 5, LSU at 4, Georgia, Clemson, and Alabama. And I do want to say really quickly why I ranked Alabama over Clemson. Yes, Alabama gave up a lot of points to South Carolina, but I think that Trevor Lawrence is having Sam Darnold's sophomore season slump a little bit. Darnold, he came into his sophomore season, he just wasn't the same guy. I don't think he was
the
as
defense
impressive.
is kind of... It felt like, at least with Darnold, that the defense was so focused on Sam Darnold, and he was so focused on having to make plays, because that year, the talent around him wasn't the same.
No.
He was playing with a lot more freshmen.
Yeah.
You know, the playmakers we were talking about earlier with USC, they were all true freshmen.
Yes.
They hadn't played at all. It seemed like he felt like he had to be the guy and had to make plays that were unnecessary.
He just
at
seemed
times.
like he forced a lot of throws.
Exactly.
And I think that Trevor Lawrence is kind of going through that same thing where a bunch of teams have had a whole offseason to view the tape. He's not this freshman phenom anymore. He doesn't have the playmakers that he did last year. He doesn't have that security blanket in Hunter Renfrow anymore. And most importantly, his defense has lost a lot on the back end. Their depth isn't as high as it once was. This is a transition year for Clemson, which obviously is different than a transition year for any other team.
They don't transition, they reload.
Yeah, they reload.
Just like Alabama.
They reload, and it takes them a very short amount of time to kick into high gear.
Obviously, we'll get more in depth in that. Nick, let's hear yours.
So for me, before my phone dies, we got Michigan State at 25, A&M at 24, Kansas State at 23, Michigan 22. Like for me, it was hard for me to put Michigan in the top 25, but they made it. UCF at 21, USC at 20, Virginia at 19, Utah 18, Boise State 17, Washington 16, Cal 15, Iowa 14, Oregon 13, Notre Dame 12, Penn State 10. My top 10 will be Texas at 10, Florida at 9, Auburn at 8, Wisconsin at 7, Oklahoma at 6, LSU at 5, Ohio State at 4, Georgia at 3, Bama at 2, and Clemson at 1. And for me, the reason why I have Ohio State at 4 is you could say, sure, I have bias. But for me, we will not see Georgia and LSU in the top. We will not see both those teams in the college football playoff. So for me, I'd choose one or the other. I chose Georgia, so I set Ohio State in my 4th slot.
Okay, yeah, for me, at 25, I had UCF, 24, Michigan State, 23, Texas A&M, 22, Virginia, 21, Kansas State, 20, Michigan, 19, Utah, 18, USC. Obviously, I put a lot of emphasis on head-to-head matchups. USC was the better team in that game over Utah. The talent, I think, there's a bit of a disparity. I really like USC. 17, Boise State, 16, Washington, 15, Cal, 14, Penn State, 13, Iowa, 12, Oregon, 11, Florida, 10, Texas, number 9, Notre Dame, who I think we might have skipped over because we were all gushing over Bo Nix. However, the Fighting Irish looked pretty darn good against Georgia. They played it into the 4th quarter. Ian Book can make some plays with his legs. He can make any throw on the field. They got a good defense. Notre Dame's season is definitely not over. Number 8, Auburn. Number 7, Wisconsin. Number 6, Oklahoma. Number 5, Georgia. Number 4, Ohio State. Number 3, LSU. Number 2, Alabama. And number 1, Clemson. Let me just say, before we get into the top 6 over the thing, the reason I had Ohio State and LSU in the playoff, where a couple of you guys didn't, is those are the 2 most impressive teams that I've seen on the field so far this season. But we're going to get into the top 6 of the official show rankings. Sorry, excuse me, a little bit sick out here. But number 6, the Oklahoma Sooners. Number 5, Ohio State. Number 4, LSU. Number 3, Georgia. Number 2, Alabama. And number 1, Clemson. Let's just get into it. I think the consensus was Oklahoma is still on the outside looking in. A lot of the stuff ahead of them will work itself out because they all got to play each other pretty much regarding the SEC teams. However, Jalen Hurts has looked absolutely incredible. Heisman, one of the Heisman frontrunners so far this season.
He is.
Lincoln Riley's one of the best play callers, if not the best play caller in the entire country. He's got weapons around him with the likes of CeeDee Lamb and Trey Sermon. The defense is bad, as it always is.
Yes.
Big 12 football.
But yeah, this is a darn good Oklahoma team.
Oh, it's great.
Based off of their offense and Jalen Hurts.
I mean, they were lucky that Jalen Hurts transferred. I mean, they found their quarterback. They found their 3rd straight good quarterback. I mean, it's Lincoln Riley's doing, I feel like. He doesn't get enough credit as he deserves. When you have 2 straight quarterbacks to win the Heisman, you could potentially have a 3rd. It says something about your play calling. It says something that maybe this guy should be in the NFL by now, or maybe he doesn't even want to be in the NFL. Maybe he has a perfect job. And he just makes his offense so dynamic. Their defense needs to be worked on. I will agree with you on that, but their offense is one of the best in the country.
I've actually seen a lot of improvement out of Oklahoma's defense. I think that was their issue last year, is that when they played Alabama in the Orange Bowl, a lot of us expected them to get run off the field. For the first 20 minutes of the game, they did. I mean, it was a truck running over
Alabama was Alabama, and Oklahoma just
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, it seemed like Kyler Murray, Oklahoma settled in. And while they never really made it a game, they were able to put points on the board,
And they will always be able to do that under Lincoln Riley. Jalen Hurts, his passing has improved vastly. I think it's a combination of, obviously, Lincoln Riley's scheming, and he's just worked on it.
He's just developed.
Exactly. The guy is maybe the best leader in the entire country. I mean, he's got the story to win the Heisman. I mean, Nick Saban probably loves him more than any player he's ever coached. Oklahoma's a darn good football team, and there's a very, very strong chance that they might end up in the college football playoff. Ohio State, like I said, in my opinion, the second most impressive team in the entire country so far this season. They've literally blown out everybody. The one worry I think people had going into the season is whether or not Justin Fields is legit. He's been great. Yeah, he's legit. 4 touchdown passes in a single quarter last week. He's been phenomenal so far this season. They got one of the best pass rushers in the entire country in Chase Young. They got 2 great defensive backs in Jeff Okudah and Fuller.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a darn good football team.
I mean, I will say that Ohio State hasn't played anyone up to their level yet. We smoked Miami, Ohio. I think it was 77-5, and they had to call that game early due to lightning. But I think I'm not saying Nebraska is a good football. They're not bad. I think 3-1 in the Big, and they're in the Big Ten.
They're
obviously.
A little disappointing this season.
A little disappointing. Adrian Martinez has disappointed me a little bit. But I will say this will be one of the first games where I think we'll see Justin Fields up against a good defense, up against a top Power 5 defense, and I'm excited to see him thrive. But the schedule will get harder for Ohio State, and it'll be interesting to see as they enter conference play if they can withstand this tough conference.
And obviously, as the games get tougher, we're really going to see whether or not Ryan Day is ready to take control of this Ohio State program and make them a national powerhouse. Yeah. Fighting for playoffs every year.
Yeah, it's interesting though. I mean, I've had concerns about Ohio State past couple years with their defense. I think their defense has fallen off from where it used to be. Under Jim Tressel, Ohio State was actually, I know it's hard to believe with all the athletes they put on the field the past 10 years, but they were a run-first, defensive-minded unit.
Absolutely.
That was what drove them to national titles, to the BCS games, to the Rose Bowls. Once they got Terrell Pryor, it kind of kick-started this whole, we run the spread.
And then Urban Meyer, the guy that basically almost invented the spread offense
literally
with Tim Tebow.
Invented the spread and perfected it. But here's something interesting. Ever since Ryan Day took over, it seems like the Ohio State offense has gotten even more creative.
It's balanced now.
It's balanced. It doesn't seem like they're grasping for answers anymore.
The difference I see this year compared to last year is Dwayne Haskins versus Justin Fields. I'm not saying Justin Fields is as good as Dwayne Haskins. He was a first-round pick for a reason, broke the Big Ten passing records. However, Dwayne Haskins is a pocket quarterback.
Yes.
He's not very mobile. When he got outside the pocket and his feet were moving, his accuracy dropped drastically. They can run triple options with Justin Fields. They can run the RPO, but he can also take off and run.
And they run it well.
Exactly. J.K. Dobbins, another fantastic running back. He's going to be playing on Sundays in a couple years.
Yes.
Justin Fields adds another dynamic piece to this offense.
Yeah, and, with Ohio State, it seems like every year they've got a quarterback. It's just whether they can structure the offensive system to fit how many playmakers they have on the field. And this year, I think they have. Again, this is Dobbins' junior year. He was a starter from his freshman year. I mean, the fact that Mike Weber, who's one of the best running backs to come out of the state of Michigan the past 15 years, is the backup to J.K. Dobbins, just speaks to the level of high-end talent that Ohio State employs on the field every week. And so with the Buckeyes, I do like their schedule, how it matches up the rest of the season. I'm picking Ohio State to beat Michigan every single year, no matter what, until Michigan finally beats them. But they host Penn State.
Is it 16 out of 18?
It's been last time Michigan won a a game where both teams were ranked was 2003. The last time they won a game was 2011, but that was the fluke year where Tressel was on the way out, Luke Fickell was on the way in.
And it was just kind of, they were bad.
They've never beat Urban Meyer, and Urban Meyer, let's be honest here, I think Urban Meyer was more of a figurehead last year. I think the real coach of that team was Ryan Day.
True.
That's very possible.
When they eviscerated Michigan on national TV, I firmly believe that was Ryan Day who was in control of the team, and as Michigan fans, that really concerns me. So I'm picking Ohio State to beat Michigan, and then for the rest of their schedule, if they get through Wisconsin, which is a home game, it's very possible Ohio State could go unbeaten.
And then that would probably automatically slip them into the playoff.
Exactly, and the thing for Ohio State is whether or not they can avoid an Iowa slip-up.
Oh my God!
Like a couple years ago.
The trap game.
Exactly. There's going to be a trap game this season. It happens with every single team around the country.
Yep.
It's just whether or not you can grind out the game.
It was almost
get a win.
Maryland last year.
Exactly.
It was inches from being Maryland last year.
Moving on. LSU and Georgia. I had LSU ranked ahead of them. This is why. I've said it repeatedly. LSU so far, on the field, in my opinion, has been the best team in the entire country.
Sure.
So far this season.
Yeah.
That Texas win was the most impressive game and the most impressive win so far this season. Joe Burrow, the most impressive player. They have arguably the best defensive player in the entire country. And Grant Delpit at safety. They got a pass rush. Coach O, you know he's going to get him ready for the big game.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the worst Coach O impression ever. Anyway, I love Coach O. How can you not? How can you not?
Yeah.
The guy is just, I love him. One of the best recruiters in the country. He'll get you fired up. Just listen to any of his pregame, halftime speeches. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers. Yeah, no, I mean, Chaz, you raise an interesting point. The only reason I have Georgia ranked over LSU is when I think about whether these two teams meet, if these two teams met right now and played at a neutral site, who would win? And the answer to my question is Georgia, because I think they proved that they have the defense and they have the running game capable of sustaining drives and getting their defense off the field. And they might be the team, along with Alabama, that could shut down Joe Burrow. And running game travels. If you have a strong running game, you can't really scheme around it because, yeah, you can put 8 or 9 guys in the box to try and stop the run, but you're going to open up the pass. And Jake Fromm is more than capable of making good throws in the open field. So that's why I have Georgia higher, but, man, it would be really great to see him play.
Yeah. And we might see them play in the SEC championship game. It's very realistic.
Very possible.
Oh, for sure.
You can't deny Georgia's talent.
No.
I mean, the running back committee that they have,
DeAndre Swift, incredible.
it's incredible. DeAndre Swift, in the conversation with the likes of Jonathan Taylor and Travis Etienne,
Yep.
Zach Moss, those type of guys, for the best running backs in the entire country. J.K. Dobbins, you could also throw his name in that hat.
Yep.
Jake Fromm, game manager. But he's more than a game manager, I think. He's a very talented game manager.
Oh, yeah.
He just doesn't need to do.
He's not flashy. He does what you need to do.
He can make every throw on the field, like
That's
he
true.
said. He just doesn't have to.
No.
I don't
They
think
don't need
that's.
him to.
I don't think that's the way Kirby wants the offense run.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was evidenced by how they ran their offense against Notre Dame. They really didn't ask Jake Fromm to do all that much because it's like asking an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid, "Here's the keys to a Bentley, just don't wreck it." That is what their running game, their defense is like. We're gonna limit them to under 25 points a game. The running game's gonna get us 2-3 touchdowns week in, week out. Throw for 1 touchdown, we win 28-15, 28-14. I mean, that is the Georgia strategy. LSU, they're a lot different. I mean, LSU now is, hey, we may give up 30 points, but man, we're gonna score 55 then, and that's kind of out of the box thinking for an SEC West team.
Exactly. I've loved what I've seen out of LSU so far. Again, that could completely change when they play Alabama because that's what we're going to see if they're really ready. If this is the LSU team that can finally go beat Alabama. They haven't been able to do it in recent years, and I think this might be the year. And the reason is Joe Burrow.
And also, I mean, on top of Burrow, LSU's finally stepped into the modern era of college offense, whereas
they're not as stubborn.
When Alabama made their transition finally in 2016 with Jalen Hurts, that opened up their offense. And while their defense has been lacking a little bit, since the heyday of 2012, 2011, their offense has more than stepped up to recover for it. But now LSU, they've said, okay, we're not going to beat Alabama with a power run game. Finally, after 7 years of.
Well, we'll just give it to Leonard Fournette.
And
every single time
he's going to get stuffed.
Exactly.
Because our play calling is so predictable. Now, you really don't know what LSU is going to run. And that's the mark of a great offense is when they line up, you don't know what they're going to run. And if you don't know what they're going to run, the defense doesn't know. And that's going to make them valuable.
Yeah, Joe Burrow's got 1,500 passing yards, 17 touchdowns compared to 2 picks. Obviously, a couple of them were cupcake games. However, the game against Texas that he had is just – it's probably the performance of the year.
In my opinion, yeah.
I didn't think I'd see those QB numbers from an LSU quarterback in a couple more years, but Joe Burrow's the man now. It's not a run-heavy offense anymore, like you guys said. It's not a Leonard Fournette offense anymore. It's now unpredictable.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a good running back, too. It's not like they don't have a running back. He's got almost 300 yards in the season and 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
But
the difference is... go for it.
What I like about the offense, Chaz, they don't need to rely on their running back. They
Exactly.
can have their quarterback throw 50 times a game, and they can still win that way. So they can beat you finally 2 different ways, and it's going to make teams like Alabama be honest when they defend them. Because in years past, Alabama, they put 10 guys in the box and 1 high safety, and they say, throw it, we dare you.
Exactly, and they haven't been able to.
Yeah.
Last year, Joe Burrow wasn't able to. This year, I think he's going to be able to as a combination of how he's improved and the fact that the offense is just – it's opened up. They've gone into the modern era. They've finally just – the stubbornness of this, we're just going to drop – we're going to get under center, I formation, pound the rock. That just isn't going to work against Alabama.
Sorry, it hasn't worked for the past 15 years.
Exactly. And this might be the team. This might be the team that does it. Now we'll move on to Alabama and Clemson. You had Alabama. We had Clemson.
Yep.
I think in terms of talent-wise, they're a step above everybody else. I think LSU, Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma are in that next bracket of, in terms of just on paper, who it is. But, speaking about Alabama, they got the Heisman Trophy runner-up in Tua Tagovailoa, a national champion.
Yes.
Arguably the best receiving corps in the entire country with the best receiver in Jerry Jeudy.
Whew.
Henry Ruggs is no joke.
No joke.
They literally go 4 or 5 deep.
Yeah.
And Najee Harris is a former 5-star recruit at running back.
Well, this has been the breakout year for Najee Harris. I think a lot of people expected it to be last year, but man, Najee Harris is an incredible running back. I spent a lot of time studying Najee Harris because his final 2 was down to Alabama and Michigan. This was back in the heyday of Jim Harbaugh's recruiting era where he was really starting to take
He's a NorCal guy, right?
He's from the Bay Area, grew up in Antioch, so, he's really dominated. A guy that we know, Nick Zeller-Singh, his high school played against Najee Harris, and Najee Harris went ballistic in that game, So this is a guy that has continued the long tradition of guys with dreads going to Alabama and running crazy, and Najee Harris is the next guy in line. My only concern with Alabama, their defense.
It's not the same as it has been. It's not.
It's really fallen off.
They lost Dylan Moses, their leader. They're probably their best defensive player.
Yeah.
However, the talent's there. They're all, highly recruited guys.
Yeah.
It's the reason
extremely talented.
It's the reason why Clemson's won, in my opinion.
Yes.
Exactly. I think Clemson is more polished at this point. I think Trevor Lawrence is the way he struggled this year just doesn't really concern me. It should, but it doesn't, just based on how well he played in the college football playoff. I think when the moments are at, when he really needs to be the guy, I think he's able to step up.
They haven't needed him yet.
Exactly. They haven't needed him. I've actually been impressed with his running game this year. He's been much more of a dual threat, which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
But he's really fast.
Yeah. Here's why I would put Alabama number 1, is that when I do these rankings, I do them based off of what would happen if these teams played right now on a neutral site. And in my opinion, Clemson is 7 or 8 weeks away from reaching their full potential, while Alabama is returning a healthy Jerry Jeudy. So at the present time, I think Clemson, we can finally say this, may be more talented than Alabama. This may be the first time Alabama has been out-athleted since 2010.
You could literally flip a coin with these two. Because, I mean, we were just raving about Alabama's receiving corps, and yet Clemson might have a better one with Justin Ross, who broke out in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
T. Higgins, who's another beast.
Yeah.
And then Amari Rodgers, who's one of the better slot receivers in the entire country, amazingly back after a torn ACL in the spring. Oh, not to mention they have maybe the second best running back in the country in Travis Etienne.
Yep. Yeah, and so, my thing is that on the defensive side, I've been a little bit concerned about Clemson. Again, it's tough to tell because with Clemson, they really just haven't played anyone yet. And so neither is Alabama necessarily.
Clemson did play Texas A&M.
Yeah, that is true.
Trevor Lawrence didn't look good, and honestly, they weren't even at their best, and yet they still dominated the game.
That is true. And so that's really the best win for Clemson, but I still have a few concerns about their defense in terms of they just lost so many guys to the NFL. Yes, they have high recruits coming in, but with Trevor Lawrence, people are scheming for him a little bit better, but yeah, it's like you said, Chaz, you could really flip a coin at the present time.
My thing is the fact that we haven't seen Trevor Lawrence at his best this year yet. He hasn't even reached 1,000 yards yet on the season. And like we've said before, they haven't needed him yet. When the moment's the brightest, he shines. So my thing is if that defense can do their thing, if Travis Etienne can keep doing what he's doing, that team can beat Bama this year. In my mind, it's not without a question. There's definitely some question marks. But in my opinion, this is probably the best chance Clemson has had of beating Bama, strictly like you said, Jack, based off talent and these little things. I think that we could finally see. And Dabo Swinney is an underappreciated coach in my opinion.
I don't know if I would say that because I think now people are recognizing that it's him and then Nick Saban and then everybody else. It seems like right now. I mean, Clemson's back. Or no, they're not back. They are now finally on that Alabama standard in terms of recruiting. I mean, they have the number one recruiting class in next year's. They've already signed like 5 or 6 5-stars in the 2020 class. They're just reloading. They lost 3 first-round picks on their defensive line, and Xavier Thomas is going to be a first-round pick in 2 years.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I think when we look at the Alabama defense and we say, well, why aren't they as good as the 2015 title team with Reuben Foster? Why aren't they as good as the C.J. Mosley team?
A lot of those guys are going to Clemson.
Well, exactly. Now you have 2 teams that are getting top-end recruits, Clemson and Georgia, on the defensive side. Because
then you add Alabama or add LSU and Georgia into that mix as well.
Because on the offensive side, LSU's always been getting those top-end guys. But on the defensive side, in my opinion, it comes down to 3 teams that are always competing for the top-tier defensive guys. That's Alabama, Clemson, and it's Georgia. 5 years ago, it was Alabama, a huge gap, and then other defensive guys.
Yeah, I mean, a couple years ago, it was also Ole Miss.
Yeah.
And then that just kind of fizzled out with the whole... we're not going to get into why it fizzled out. It was kind of disturbing. But, it's just college football is Alabama and Clemson, it seems like, the last couple of years. They played 4 years in a row, split 2-2. Do you guys think there's a very good chance we'll see round 5?
Yeah, Clemson, Clemson, Alabama, part 5. And the only way I think that we don't, and I think it's important, Chaz, when we break down the rankings, the show rankings. Right now we have 3 out of the top 4 teams are in the SEC. Well, one of those is guaranteed to fall out.
Yeah.
Just in terms of head-to-head.
And the SEC championship.
And the SEC title game. So if Alabama loses to LSU, in my opinion, they're out. But I would still say this is the year the 2 SEC teams make it. It's going to come down to whoever is the best 2 out of those 3.
Alrighty. Yeah. Yep. Those were our rankings for this week. We're going to talk about a couple of the most important games, the biggest matchups of the upcoming week. And we're going to start with we'll start on Friday. Arizona State.
Yeah, that's a big game.
At Cal. It's a big game.
Big game.
Because we're going to see whether or not Cal's offense can go up against a legit defense. That being said, the defense did not look good against Colorado for the Sun Devils.
Not at all.
However, Jaden Daniels is a talented quarterback. Eno Benjamin, we know what he can do. The offensive line looked a little bit better last week. How do you guys see this game going?
Well, I really like ASU, Chaz, to come into the Bay Area and come out with a win. And the reason is that Chase Garbers really doesn't scare me. If I'm a defensive coordinator, I don't think you really have to worry too much about scheme, disguising stuff with Chase Garbers. I just don't think he's got the ability to make plays by himself. Cal really hasn't put up that many points in a game, but what has been the hallmark is their defense. And so for ASU, their offense is just starting to click into gear. They're really starting to find their foundation. I think that they were hesitant to get Jaden Daniels, really kind of give him the reins.
He's kind of been eased into the role.
I think they're transitioning him, though. It was the most points they put up this season against a good team, against Colorado. I really liked how they performed against Colorado offensively. Defensively, they took a step back, which was a bit concerning because I think we said ASU is one of the best defensive teams coming into the Colorado game. They didn't perform all that great, especially with Laviska Shenault out for a good portion of the game. But I really just like ASU's chances because they're going to be able to score points, and Cal's not going to be able to score that many. Maybe ASU comes out with, your 20-16 victory.
I'm going to stick with the Pac-12 unranking beating the ranked. We saw it with USC and Washington. We saw it with ASU and Colorado. We saw it with ASU beating a ranked Michigan State team. For some reason, we've only had one road game, but it's obvious we don't play the best at home. We didn't play the best against Kent State, Sacramento State. Definitely didn't play the best against Boulder. But on the road is when I feel like we're at our best, and I think this Cal team will get shocked by us. I think the X factor will be Eno Benjamin. He hasn't had that game that we've been wanting to see from him yet, but I think against that Cal defense, we will finally see that. That Cal defense is good, don't get me wrong. I just feel like they'll be more focused on Jaden Daniels. And Jaden Daniels had not a breakout game against Boulder, but he
had his best game. He had his best game.
And
Clearly.
And he was finally the offensive star that we've all been looking
They let
for.
him throw the ball down the field.
Exactly.
Consistently.
And that did lead to his first turnover of the year, but it's going to happen with the freshman.
The turnover wasn't even that bad of a decision. It was just a bad throw.
Yeah.
It was an inaccurate throw. He had one really bad decision where a safety should have picked him off. He tried to throw a deep, or I believe a sideline streak, and they were in cover 2, and the safety just read it all day.
Yep.
Should have picked it off. But, that's the type of stuff you learn from and move on. I see this game going very similarly to the way that the Michigan State game went, maybe a little bit more offensive output, given that now that the season's a little bit farther along, that the reins, are the shackles are off, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think, like Jack said, maybe like a 17-10, 21-15, 21-17 type of game. But yeah, I do think the Sun Devils do come on top. Moving on to one of the 2 ranked matchups of the weekend, Virginia at Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame bounces back. I think Notre Dame is a significantly better team than Virginia. I think they win, and I think they win by 10-plus points.
100% agree. Notre Dame, potentially you could say they probably lost their chance at a playoff spot.
I disagree with that, but yeah.
You could say that, though. You can make the argument for it. But now they're just playing with more fire, and then they're going to need to win all these ranked games to even make it to the college football playoff.
I'm picking Notre Dame, and I'm picking them by at least 2.5 touchdowns.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be. I don't even think it's
Notre Dame has eased all the concerns I had when they went in on the road in Athens in a record crowd.
And they could have won that game.
And they could have won that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is remarkable. They were on the Georgia side of the field with the chance to go down and score and win the game.
Fourth down just didn't work out.
It just didn't work out. But now you're going home and you're playing Virginia. Are you kidding me? Unless Notre Dame sleepwalks through this game, they're going to win. They're going to win big.
Absolutely. Second to last game, number 24, Kansas State. We had them at 23. The AP poll had them at 24. On the road against Oklahoma State. I think this is a trap game. However, I do think Kansas State can come away with it.
Really looking forward to this game. Chris Kleiman, the buzz is going around.
Mm-hmm.
K-State, maybe on their way back. We'll have to see. Mike Gundy, that team was impressive against Texas last week.
They were.
They could have come away with a victory. Would have really rocked the Big 12, I should say. Now you've got another Big 12 matchup. You said K-State's on the road?
Yep.
Yeah, so, it's tough. It is tough to win
I said
Stillwater.
K-State, but I say that very cautiously because this is another one where I'm like, I don't know. I could see it going either way. You could see, that Oklahoma State offense just exploding, and Kansas State is not built for a shootout.
No, if this becomes it all depends if it's going to be played in quicksand or if it's going to be played as a track meet. Because if it's a rock fight, give me K-State. If this score gets collectively over 60 points, though, Oklahoma State's just going to have the offensive firepower to pull away because that's how Mike Gundy structures his team. He wants the points to rise because he knows that his team can go down and score almost every possession.
I mean, I'm not 100% sold on K-State. I don't think anyone really is. It was hard for me to rank them. I mean, it wasn't hard. I wasn't confident when ranking them. And like you said, this could be a trap game for K-State. So I think I'll take the home team in this game, and it probably will be decided by 10 or 15 points.
Alrighty, final game. The other ranked matchup this weekend. The USC Trojans go on the road to face the Washington Huskies. Jack, who do you like in this one?
This one's tough, because USC, they really did look good against Utah. It's always hard to tell, but I don't think Washington drops 2 games at home this early in the season, so give me Washington, but it all depends on whether Clay Helton and that defense can disguise enough coverages to force Jacob Eason into making some boneheaded decisions, because Eason, I think what it really comes down to is the accuracy in between the line of scrimmage and 20 yards in front of him. We've got no problems with him throwing the ball down the field, but if USC can generate pressure, they'll be able to stay in the game. That's what matters.
Give me the third stringer. I like what
I like it.
I like what USC has been doing all year. Even despite the injuries, we thought their season was over when JT Daniels went down. At least that's what I thought. I didn't have them even touching the top 25 ever again. But they've proved me wrong. They've proved a lot of people wrong, and I think that they'll go into this Washington game like any other Pac-12 game. It'll be somewhat of a slugfest at first, but I think they'll pick it up, and I think they'll come away with a victory.
I'm with you on that one. I like the Trojans. I think Jacob Eason's going to make a couple really bonehead plays. I think this game is going to go down to the wire. And I think USC's talent at the skill positions are what's going to make the difference. So, yeah, I like the Trojans. It's going to be an insane week. I'm excited. I know you boys are excited. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Playoff Committee. I will see you next week. Thank you, boys, for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Peace!